Hello. We are 13 minutes away. I figured out a timer thing.
Hello, hello.
I'm not sure how big of an audience it's back tonight. We'll see. Oh.
And I ought to get some food. You might have a lot to eat. Backdrop. Spain.
And just thought a reminder, you'll be speaking after chatting.
Okay.
Uh, 6:15 is 6:30.
Why is not showing my screen? These command. It's so hot when I first got in here. This is my
Everything. Steiner participant height. Light captained. Webinar controlled. Steiner participant height. Webinar controlled. The participant length. And the participant length. Participant. Participant button. More Steiner type. Range. Starting and meeting. Starting and meeting.
You know the way I'm thinking.
This came from dinner, but dinner for tomorrow.
You have to take more than that. I actually brought to-go containers.
So I can take more?
Yes.
Yeah, you can take more.
Yeah, we might use some containers too. They're here.
For you, and I will pick at it.
Perfect.
And as people get their chairs, but if you tell me to get more, I will take more.
Again, I was trying to set up captions. I'm going to have to link it in the chat today. Tomorrow it'll be in the we are now at 796 people, so we just need 4 more people to make 800. That's 800 people wanting to make a difference. I'm moving the timer up to 2 minutes. Hi, Tony.
Okay.
I haven't sent you the link for tomorrow yet. Are you interpreting tomorrow? Okay,
All 3
I'll send it
days.
to you after. I'll be like,
Me and Amy.
yes. Hi, everybody. We'll start in 1 minute and 30 seconds, as you can see at the timer. I just found out about the timer today. It's kind of cool. Do you have an audience there, Dr. Matthews? You look like you're in a presentation room or something.
Yes, I'm in a classroom.
Oh, nice. So I can see us on the screen behind you. Dark.
Guess I should have done a sound check. Am I clear, folks?
Good here.
Good. Okay.
Uh, I got to make noise. Stop. Okay. Um, we might as well go ahead and get started. I'm going to go off camera and good luck, Shannon.
All right. Thank you. Well, hello everyone that's joined so far. Thank you for coming to our session today as part of Stop the Stigma conference, hosted by Moxie Educational Services and the community. My name is Shannon Ross, and I am the founder of the community as well as a consultant with the McNeely Prison Education Consortium in Southeast Wisconsin. At Stop the Stigma, we acknowledge the importance of person first language because language shapes how we understand one another. Person first language centers humanity over diagnosis or system and equity. We also recognize that individuals may prefer identity first language, and we encourage speakers and participants to honor personal preference whenever possible. We'd also like to begin with a land acknowledgement. Although this conference is held virtually, we acknowledge the indigenous peoples whose land we occupy as we gather, learn, and collaborate. The community is headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on the traditional homelands of the Ho-Chunk Nation, the Menominee Nation, and the Potawatomi Nation, with enduring ties to the Ojibwe and the Odawa peoples of the Council of the Three Fires. Moxie Educational Services is based in New Hampshire on the ancestral lands of the Abenaki and the Pennacook peoples, whose histories, cultures, and sovereignty continue today. We honor their resilience, ongoing contributions, and enduring relationship to the land. This acknowledgement of responsibility. Thank you for helping create a conference culture rooted in respect, care, and openness. ASL interpreters are provided for each session, and CART captions are activated. To support blind and deafblind attendees, we'll begin with a brief visual description as well at the beginning of all panels. I'm going to just describe myself and say a couple more things before handing it off. I'm a light-skinned biracial male with a close-cut beard and very short hair, and I'm wearing a plain black t-shirt. A little bit about the community. At the community, a core part of our work is rooted in correcting the narrative about people who have experienced incarceration and other forms of system involvement. Stigma is not just a social attitude, it shapes policy, access to opportunity, health outcomes, and how people see themselves. When someone is reduced to a label, it limits what others believe is possible for them and what they believe is possible for themselves. Stop the Stigma is deeply aligned with our mission because we believe storytelling and story caring, language, and belonging are foundational to equity. If we want different outcomes, we have to challenge the stories that justify exclusion and replace them with narratives grounded in empowerment, agency, humanity, and potential. We also have programming at the community inside facilities in Wisconsin. Starting in a couple weeks, we have the beginning of a CHW, community health worker, pre-apprenticeship that will be taught inside of facilities. And we have a newsletter that has been going on for 11 years. It was the beginning activity and service and effort of our organization. And we have 3 other newsletters now that are going to the jail, the Community Reintegration Center, and to folks outside of carceral facilities to understand what's going on and stay up to date on news and success stories and encouragement and inspiration. We do a lot of efforts around correcting the narrative as well, with experiences and storytelling to highlight the successes, humanity, and agency of people that have criminal records. Members of our team at the community will be involved throughout the conference as moderators. The first event tonight is the film being Michelle at 6:30 Eastern. This will be followed by a panel discussion with the film's director and other experts immediately afterwards. All Friday and Saturday there are more panels, and tomorrow night there is a virtual table reading of the play Brick by Brick, written by our very own Ben Wright. Speaking of Ben, so much of our work is premised on fostering empowerment and agency, and it has been incredible to see Ben lead this partnership from our side at the community and proactively engage in ideating, problem solving, and bringing possibilities to life. We're lucky to have you on our team, and Dolly Parton would be proud to know she's quoted in your email signature. Lastly, I want to highlight Moxie and Dr. Matthews. Thank you for bringing us on board as a partner for this year, and I hope it has been a decision for you as it has been for us.
Thank you, Shannon. I am Dr. Matthews. I'm physically located in Manchester, New Hampshire. I am a Black male. I am wearing a black shirt with a brownish suit coat, and so excited to be here and joining everyone for the opening of Stop the Stigma. Just to give you a little history about how Stop the Stigma came about, I feel it's important to recognize and acknowledge the student that actually came up with the ideal for Stop the Stigma. Shayla was a student at Southern New Hampshire University, and at the time, she had just been released from prison and has started her educational journey, gaining a bachelor's degree in psychology. Her goal was to get a degree that allowed her the opportunity to go back to the community to help those individuals in her community that were suffering from various mental issues and trauma related to domestic abuse. Shayla came to me one day and she was like, Dr. Matthews, I want to do something that reduces the stigma related to incarceration. During that time period, Shayla was applying for multiple jobs and she was always being declined. And she was like, the stigma of being incarcerated is terrible. I've done my time, I've paid for the mistake that I've made, and I want to do more for society, but I can't. I want to reduce the stigma. I challenge Shayla to think about not only reducing the stigma, but to stop the stigma. So Shayla created and served as our first director of the Stop the Stigma conference that we're attending today. Shayla has been an amazing part of the team. And at that time, Shayla was a student worker and I was her supervisor. I had created a program called Project AIM, Achieving Independence and Mobility, that with the assistance of students became the university's first initiative to provide a college degree to incarcerated individuals. As the program began to grow across the US, the students decided that they wanted to take their project and turn it into something bigger. And that became the start of Moxie Educational Services. Moxie officially launched on April the 7th, 2025, and we are excited to be able to take and bring Stop the Stigma to you today in partnership with the community. The work that we do falls into three particular categories. Moxie spends our time working with colleges and universities that want to expand or to start a higher education in prison program using micro credentials and badging. We also work with formerly incarcerated individuals that have a desire to start and own their own business. We work with these entrepreneurs and helping them to develop their business plan, helping them to create their bylaws for their board of directors, secure funding, secure a location or site for their business. And all of that work is done with student learners that are also completing their degree at the same time. The work of Moxie really focuses and centers on providing a space for those that have been justice impacted to find their voice, to share their voice, and to be heard by others. One of the things that I'm most excited about is that in April, which is just a couple of months away, we will be launching our very first student justice impacted clubs across the United States. Student justice impacted clubs are designed to provide a space for students that are justice impacted to come together, share their stories, come up with strategies, collaborate, and impact public policies, not only in their state, but across the nations. In 2027, Moxie will be going on the road, and we will be inviting all of the students that are part of these student justice impacted clubs to join us for Moxie 2027. And I hope you will be there with us as well. As we move forward with the future with Moxie and with Stop the Stigma, I also have to give a huge shout out to Ben Wright. Ben, when he was a student here with Southern New Hampshire University, he was also the second director for our Stop the Stigma conferences and has really taken it to a whole new level. Ben, we could not have done this work without you and definitely could not have pulled it off this year without your dedication, commitment, and the incredible partnership with the community. I am excited to be here, and I also would like to acknowledge the Gamma Nu chapter of Delta Mu Delta that made it possible for our feature film, Being Michelle, to be provided and available to you today. I am currently sitting in a classroom with students from Delta Mu Delta that are also joining us and are part of this wonderful learning experience. Thank you all for being here, for joining us. Let the learning begin. Make sure to stay hydrated. Make sure to be taking notes. Every session promises to be something that everyone can learn from, and we are excited and definitely appreciative of you taking your time to join us for Stop the Stigma 2026.
Thank you, both of you. We have about 15 more minutes. So I think it would be nice to hear from both of you what you hope people will take away from the film and also from the conference as a whole. So I will let you do that.
Yeah, I can speak about definitely the conference as a whole. That I'm hoping in the work that we do, we're always hoping that people become what we call evangelists. When there's an event and at the end of it, I'll commonly say, we love your money as a nonprofit. Everyone needs funding. But oftentimes, more than that, we're hoping that people go away with an understanding of why and an ability to have conversations with people, to challenge people's thinking, to challenge their own thinking about stigma in general across the board, why we have certain stereotypes that we hang on to, why we have certain views that we immediately justify and don't want to have somebody question us on and explain. Really having those conversations, having those discussions is so crucial. And if our approach is to tell people what to do or to shame people or to kick and spit and to get angry, that doesn't really create dialogue. I think everyone who lives has at some point been wrong about something or realized they had a different view on a scenario or a person than what the totality of the story justified. And so giving that grace to other people to find their own journey to that healthier understanding, to get over their own judgment and their attachment to stigma towards folks is the same thing that you would want that you had at some point in your life. So be a part of that person's journey, be a part of your own journey, and recognize your own areas that you have stigma that you think of when it comes to populations, and just have conversations. And so ultimately from this, hoping that people walk away with the same concept of the ability to and the understanding of why it is so important to have these conversations, to challenge folks in a healthy way, to create dialogue, and to challenge ourselves so that we really understand the same things that we're talking about and the issues that we are so committed to.
I would like to kind of echo what Shannon had just shared. For me, the importance of this conference is really being uncomfortable. I think it's very important for us to challenge ourselves to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented before us, to perhaps attend a session or view a session that maybe we know nothing about so that we're able to grow and learn. Many times we kind of tend to lean toward those things that we're comfortable with. However, this is such a unique opportunity for us to think outside the box, to actually have an opportunity to be part of something that maybe we never had thought about before as it relates to accessibility, as it relates to how individuals that are incarcerated, that are also dealing with mental challenges, they're dealing with physical disabilities, really exposing ourselves to being uncomfortable and also taking advantage, if at all possible, just to engage with individuals in the chat, right? Simply announcing where you're from, the state that you're living in. We have hundreds of registrants for the event over the course of the next 3 days. And it's really an opportunity in this moment, in this time, to build community. And we're fortunate that the community is with us today, right? So there's resources available for us to network, for us to partnership. Just don't come and just kind of, not take advantage of those opportunities and stepping outside of your comfort zone, being willing to kind of open up and ask questions in the chat, making yourself vulnerable in this space where we're all are truly here to support each other. We're here to support one another. We're here to learn from one another, to collaborate. And once Stop the Stigma is over, it's actually just beginning, right? You have to continue to kind of indulge in these conversations, and we have to be there to support one another as we move forward and grow. So that would kind of be my like words of wisdom as you, if this is your first time attending a Stop the Stigma conference. If you're a returning attendee, definitely think about, compared to previous Stop the Stigmas, what are the top three things that you've learned this year that you really want to share? And then also share that learning with your family, with your community, on your social media feeds. Let's really take advantage of the momentum that we have to learn from one another and also to support one another.
Another thing that is probably valuable is maybe to talk a bit more about what we do at the community. I gave it just a very summary explanation of to some of that, and I see Ben in the chat highlighted the newsletter that we have. We're positioned in this between three different sections that we try to blend and bring together: infrastructure, carceral learning, and narrative. And in each of those areas, we have different efforts that we're moving forward on, creating, maintaining. As I mentioned, the newsletter is kind of what everything started as when I was incarcerated. I served 17 years in the Wisconsin prison system myself, from the age of 19 to 36. And I got out in 2020, September, during COVID. I always tell people, for me, it was great to get out during COVID because, as a person who is socially awkward in general, I definitely was not ready for society and all the different, you know, levels of interaction you could have after not having been able to have much at all for years with anyone around me except for maybe a hug during a visit. And so COVID allowed me to dip my toe slowly into, free life. And since coming home, we've just been able to build out to have some more projects that are going on inside. I highlighted the pre-apprenticeship program. We have a 4 credit class that we're building out to be taught in Marquette, sorry, inside of a cultural facility. And we have a number of events and experiences that we have created or we've co-created that we put on across the state and even outside the state. Several of them have happened across the country, and we're planning a couple right now. And just different ways to, again, create these conversations around the way people are viewed, the understanding that folks have about the criminal legal system in particular. Ben has been really, really instrumental in bringing into the work that we do and an understanding in our organization around the way we understand and the way we create access and equity for those that have disabilities. And so, like, all of that work is really just the foundation of where we're trying to be a value add in this overall ecosystem across the country and the state around systems change, right? And so anyone can check out our website. We can post it in the chat just to kind of see if there's anything of value. But a lot of videos, again, the newsletter, and anyone that has any more curiosity, we're happy to always engage with folks.
I just want to acknowledge that we have some incarcerated students joining us tonight. And that's one of the awesome opportunities of this conference and other virtual conferences out there. We have 2 students from the University of Maine, up in Maine. So that's a wonderful program. And I've worked with about 6 to 7 states to provide live streaming of this conference over the next 3 days. So that's really awesome. Um, there are so many panels to check out, so make sure you look at the program book over the next couple of days and see what panels you might want to go to. And every time somebody asks me, which panel do you think I should go to? I'm like, all of them. So everything has something for everyone. So we have a panel on mental health, we have one on the courtroom, we have one on re-entry, vocational rehabilitation. I mean, it's all over the place. So there's truly something for everyone. So the transition to the next section, which is the screening of being Michelle, I'm going to put the link in the chat one more time. You need to register through a website called Kineman. It's a very easy registration. All you have to do is put in your email, and I think you have to make a password, and then it'll give you a ticket like that. It's easy. Um, Let me put that link in. Grace, you have a really interesting question. She asked if we have training for those who want to work with those who have been incarcerated. The way you phrased it, it's about formerly incarcerated individuals. We have sessions on re-entry, we have sessions on vocational rehabilitation, we have meetings about what now, what to do next. We also have one focused on LGBT, and we have a section focused on community members and different sessions. So all of those can really help in terms of training. It's not necessarily, actual staff training in that regard, but it will expose you to what's important about working with individuals that have disabilities and have been formerly incarcerated. All right, so I posted the shot in the link in the chat. Make sure you register that. The movie will start exactly at 6:30 p.m. When the movie is over, we have a panel with the producer of the film and several experts that worked on the film. I gotta tell you, this is a very emotional, very intense film to watch. So make sure you have some tissues and your thinking cap on, because you're gonna see a lot. And it's eye-opening. It really is. It's about a deaf autistic woman who survived incarceration and abuse and now uses her artwork to tell her story about her past. So I'm really excited about that. All right, I'm gonna pause here. You can switch over to the film. The Zoom will be open the entire time. So if anybody needs help, if you can't get in the film, just let me know and I'll be on the chat. Otherwise, we'll pause here. Thank you, Shannon and Dr. Matthew, for the introductions, and thank you for being involved in my life in the last couple of years. So, all right, one more time, I will post the link. Again, if you need any help at all, feel free to chat or email me. Well, I can help you get in. Oh no. Sorry, I was reading my grace stuff and I was finding out loud. Anyway, so yeah. Dr. Matthews, if they start watching now, can they just press join screening now? Or does it start exactly at 6:30?
It starts at exactly 6:30.
So we have to wait a couple of minutes. Dr. Matthews, do you have any panels that you're especially looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the one that I'm moderating on Friday. I've been doing a lot of
Medical
research.
neglect.
Yes, it made me uncomfortable. It's a topic that I wasn't as familiar with, so I'm excited to kind of dive into that learning with Dr. Andres, and yeah, I'm just like really looking forward to it. So I'm
What
going
about
to go.
you?
I'm going to go log in to Kinema.
So, and Shannon,
So
what about you?
it's interesting. I was gonna say the one with our close partner Dr. Hawks and Dr. Andres. I'm actually curious as well about that one. So that was I was gonna say a similar panel, but there's a lot of great ones. So I'm on two of them. So those are panels that I definitely have some buy-in for. So, but yeah, the one about the medical neglect, that one stood out to me for sure.
I'm really looking forward to Dr. Hawk being on it. She and I have been, well, we have all been working with her on a community health worker program. It's been really exciting to work on that. We offer basically a course to people who are currently incarcerated in Wisconsin to be able to take community health worker, um, a courted toy certification. So it's pretty cool. All right, so we have 3 minutes to go. I'm going to post the link again because we have a couple of new people that just joined. There's the link. Like I said, if you're having issues getting into it, please let me know. We have 1 minute, 54 seconds. Remember, right after the film, we'll come right back to the dream, and the wonderful panel will happen. And just so you know, Deb, Dr. Goodman, I see you in the guest chat. You're not in the panel chat. Make sure you come back as a panelist when the panel starts. I think. I think I see you. Check. Oh, I'm just gonna stay here for another minute. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and close out 6:30. The Zoom will be open, so the shop will be open if you need anything. Oh, it's still here. So that's what I meant. I will turn off 6:30. So, I'm assuming most people have already transitioned to kind of my, so I might be talking my stuff right now, but so you watching them too. You watching them too. I didn't know exactly about time. I might help you that time to what happen. All right, enjoy the film. All right, for everyone that's here now, we are going to wait until 8 p.m. Eastern to start the panel. So we have 13 more minutes to relax, decompress, because that was a lot to take. So just go get something to drink, and then we'll come back and start the panel. Oh my. Let me, and if anybody needs anything in the next 13 minutes, I'll be here. If you are a panelist, you can go ahead and turn on your camera if you want. I was just telling everyone, if you missed it, we're starting in 13 minutes. The panel is off. Oh my God. And that's first. There's a lot of people trickling in now. Again, we will start the panel at 8. Who's feeding me? Back. Back. Oh, no, it's not just you. No. Come on. This is not- Most finish them so big. It just done and put up.
So for people who have just joined, it'll be 10 minutes before we start the actual panel.
I'm in Rhode Island. I don't know. The first time I started the film, I thought, I'm just, oh my God, my stern. I've concluded my mistakes like most of the other the men I was in. Ran also auf.
May, are you feeling better? You were sick. You feeling better?
Yes, I am a little bit better. I'm gonna try not to cough because once it starts, it doesn't stop. But I am. Thanks, Deb. It's so nice to see everybody. Miss you all.
Yeah, Dr. Kennedy says, me too. Been busy. I'm trying to be ready for questions, so I figured I better put my glasses on so I can see the questions, Dr. May is saying. Yeah, Deb saying, I was trying to avoid that, but I may need to also.
This is Delbert. I have two pair of glasses, one for easy questions and then the other one for harder questions. So I got my
I
two
like that.
glasses ready.
I like that. I like that. May, you were moderating, right? Am I right? Yeah, the panel, but I think May is going to start with the introductions and then pass it over to me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Either way, it's May, Ben. Don't you worry.
Right, right. And Ben just said that he just wanted to be sure to add the visual descriptions, so that's why he's writing that down.
The things that I can find out.
A lot of people are asking for that Zoom link.
People have been asking in the chat if they can watch the film at some other point. So we'll talk about that too.
Mm.
And Ben,
Ben.
I started blocking up now.
Oh,
My chat was blocking Devin, I see.
will the panel last for an hour or?
It's scheduled until 9:30.
Okay,
8 to
so about an
9:30.
hour and a half.
Yep, hour and a half.
Okay. Deb, what's your sign name?
It's
Short
just
and
finger spelled. It used to be this back in the day, but now it's just finger spelling. I had long hair, but not now.
all right.
Make sure I put the questions in there.
I'll make sure to put the questions.
I'm too many questions already.
Alex, I see a lot of questions in there already, so I'll move them over.
Deb, I'm just reading some of what people are saying. Yeah, I'm seeing there's all sorts of different questions being said. Yeah.
Dr. Deb was saying, yeah, I wonder if all the folks from the panel are from different states or not, or where are you all located?
No, but I don't.
And Ben is saying, what I'm going to do is turn off my camera once we get everything started. We have about a little bit over a minute before we get started. So, yeah, I'll just sit here with my camera on. It's great to see everyone. So it's nice because before I was like looking at the chat and trying to take care of everything logistically, and now I put that window down, I get to see all your great faces.
Um, uh,
We'll go ahead and get started.
Hey, hello everyone. Can you, your interpreters can hear me okay? Yes, I should have done a sound check. Good. So my name is May Thornton Mara. I'm producer on the film Being Michelle. I'd like to thank all of you for coming to our session today as part of the Stop the Stigma conference hosted by the community and Moxie Educational Services. I'd like to give a special thanks to Ben Wright for all of his incredible hard work. Here we go. At Stop the Stigma.
Music.
No problem. At Stop the Stigma, we acknowledge the importance of person-first language because language shapes how we understand one another. Person-first language centers humanity over diagnosis or system involvement and reflects our shared commitment to dignity, respect, and equity. We also recognize that individuals may prefer identity-first language, and we encourage speakers and participants to honor personal preference. We'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. Although this conference is held virtually, we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples whose lands we occupy as we gather, learn, and collaborate. The community is headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on the traditional homelands of the Ho-Chunk Nation, the Menominee Nation, and the Potawatomi Nation, with enduring ties to the Ojibwe and Ottawa peoples of the Council of the Three Fires. Moxie Educational Services is based in New Hampshire on the ancestral lands of the Abenaki and Pennacook peoples, whose histories, cultures, and sovereignty continue today. We honor their resilience, ongoing contributions, and enduring relationship to the land. This acknowledgement is only a beginning. We encourage all attendees to learn about the Indigenous nations whose lands they reside on and to support ongoing efforts towards Indigenous justice and sovereignty. Accessibility is a shared responsibility. Thank you for helping create a conference culture rooted in respect, care, and openness. ASL interpreters are provided for each session and captions are activated. To support blind and deafblind attendees, we'll begin with brief visual descriptions. I'll go first and then invite each panelist to do the same. I'm a white woman with brown hair pulled back in a bun. I'm wearing a black turtleneck sweater and I'm sitting in front of a framed painting of a forest. I'll invite Dr. Guthman next, and Deb, you can ask the next person to give theirs.
Great. I'll go ahead and permit the interpreters to sign for me. I'll just voice for myself. I am a white woman. I have blonde hair. I'm wearing all black. I'm sitting in an office surrounded by wood, and I'll pass it on to May Kennedy.
Hello, everyone. A visual description of myself is I am an Asian female wearing a coral colored shirt that is long sleeved. I do have long black hair and I am wearing my glasses as well. I will pass it on to Del.
Hello. I'm a middle-aged white male with glasses, gray hair, short gray hair. I'm wearing a blue sweater with white stripes, and I'm seated in front of a lamp and what looks like curtains.
Hello, my name is Mohammed. I'm a light-skinned male, black male with a short beard. I have a black tech tee on saying Boston Finest. And behind me, you'll see a blank white wall.
Okay, and I have just a few additional reminders. The chat is open and encouraged. Please help keep it respectful and inclusive. Zoom microphones and cameras will be off for attendees by default. If access needs arise during the session, please pause and flag them. I'm thrilled to now announce the moderator or introduce the moderator for this session, Dr. May Kennedy. She serves as Impact Advisor for Being Michelle, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you all. Thanks, May.
Great. And again, hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here tonight with all of you. Before I start, I do want to just make you aware that I will have some questions that I will pose for the panelists. And at the end, we will leave it open for audience questions. We do ask that you please type those questions in the Q&A. We've seen some come into the chat, but with the chat moving as quickly as it is, there's just no way to keep up. So please do utilize the Q&A when asking questions. Okay, great. So we'll begin by introducing myself. I'll do that very briefly, and then I'll go ahead and ask each panelist to do the same as well. As May mentioned, I was the impact advisor for this film. Deb had actually connected me with May back in 2021, I think. And at that time, they didn't realize that my deaf father served 7.5 years in federal corrections facility, and I have a son who is autistic. It just happened to be that I got connected with this project and saw that the film hit on both of those two areas that were huge parts of my life. It impacted me tremendously as well. So in 2022, we debuted the film for the first time at the Big Bend Film Festival. And that's when I actually met Michelle for the first time and felt like it was such an honor to become Michelle's friend and to work with this wonderful, incredible team of very passionate individuals. And I am very passionate about this movie. I do have with me today four individuals. The producer, as we mentioned, May Thornton Mara. We also have the executive producer, who is Delbert Wetter. We have an advisor, who is Dr. Deb Guthman. And we have our Boston police officer, Mohammed Abanur. So I do want to ask each of you if you wouldn't mind giving a brief introduction of yourselves and maybe explain how you became involved and what your role was in this film. And if you're not involved in the film, how you learned about the film. So I will have, let me see who I'm going to have start. Mohammed, would you mind? Sure.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. And I'm happy to be here today. Again, my name is Mohammed Abnoor. This is my sign name. I'm in Boston. I'm a part of Boston Police Department since 2023. I am the first deaf individual that is part of the police department. And my background, Somalian. I met one of the advisors, Gabriel, who has been involved with the beginning of with
Being Michelle.
with being Michelle, and we made that connection through LinkedIn. Because with my background working with police, in the police department with deaf individuals, I watched the film and I was having meetings with May and Deb, and it was really insightful seeing the film, and it really was taken aback in regards to like being able to see the purpose of communication and how equal access to communication is really important, especially as I am a police officer in Boston.
Del, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Del. And I mentioned briefly, I'm the executive producer for this film. And how I originally learned about this film was through a nonprofit organization that I've been involved with. The organization was called Ability. But now the name has since changed, and now it's called Disability Belongs. Disability Belongs is the organization. It is a nonprofit organization with the goal of several goals. One of them is reducing violence, reducing stigma, and through research, I learned that a strong indicator of stigma is, what we see on TV and in films that influences what we see or think. If we've never seen disability on TV and films, it could influence an individual their negative perception of disability. If you do see disabilities on film and television, and it's a negative representation, it would also produce that negative stigma. So I've worked with many film producers encouraging a positive and more framing of disability in a positive light, with characters, writers, producers being involved in the entertainment industry. And so that's how I ended up meeting May and the director, working with them about with this film. And it's just, I mean, I've fallen in love with it. It's a fabulous story. And once we started working together, they asked me to join their production team. And this film is personal for me. As a deaf individual, I also have a son who has autism. The film really just impacted me in many ways.
Thank you so much. Deb, you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. Such an honor to be here with you all tonight. A little bit about my background and then how I got connected with the film. I've worked in the field with deaf individuals for a long time, for over 40 years. And I started out as a teacher. and then ended up interacting with individuals who needed assistance with substance use issues. And there were no programs available for deaf individuals. And we were able to set up the first program of its kind in the United States in Minnesota many years ago. Through that experience, I encountered individuals who, because of their drug and alcohol use, were incarcerated with very limited access. And that really started my interest in trying to figure out how to have more equal access for individuals in the criminal justice system. I worked at the in Fremont, California, at the School for the Deaf as well, and was a liaison with the police that we had interactions with for the students on campus. So I was involved from an adult standpoint in the treatment environment and from the youth standpoint as well, having the same kind of inequitable interactions for the youth when police were involved with infractions that had happened on campus. So myself and two other colleagues, Gabe Lomas, that Mohammed had mentioned, and Damara Paris, got interested in putting together the first book of its kind. And not because I was going to promo it for you, but I'm working on another project, so I happen to have a copy. But the book is Deaf People in the Criminal Justice System. May was working on the film and looking for statistics and data, which is pretty much non-existent. And so she discovered the book and reached out to us. And that was back around 2021 or so. So we've been involved working together since. And for me, the film was especially meaningful because Michelle is like many of the students that I worked with through the years who ended up in environments such as she did, once again, because they didn't have full access early on. And once in the system, it really failed them. So I'm excited to have you all here tonight and so pleased that you were able to see the film. And that story really will help us continue on with our discussion this evening.
Thank you. And May, did you want to comment briefly before I get started with the first question?
Yeah, I'll just say that my husband and I have been collaborating together on social impact documentary films for over 15 years. And he's the director of the film. His name is Atin Mehra, and he was born and raised in northern India. Um, by chance, he met Michelle after she had been out of prison for about a year, but had already been rearrested at that point when he met her. And it was by chance that he met her. He did a little short sit down interview with her, and we decided that it was very important to continue working with Michelle to bring her story to the world. It was a long journey for us, as you experienced throughout the film. You didn't know what was going to happen and if they were going to send her back to prison or not. And that was our journey the entire time we were making the film. We didn't know what was going to happen, so it was quite a process to bring this story out. And we have such an amazing team that's collaborated on this beautiful film. And we like to say this is the Being Michelle family, and now all of you are also part of the Being Michelle family. So look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you. Yes. So with that, I will begin with the questions. So I actually am going to start with you, Del. Would you mind sharing maybe what it was like working with this video team and working with Michelle over the years, and the storytelling tools that the team used to make sure that the film truly reflected Michelle's story and Michelle's perspective?
First of all, I want to commend May and others. The film, including deaf individuals in this. Michelle grew up, having not had her own voice, not being able to express her story or tell her story, and just being neglected. May and the other person, Jill, was in her perspective, we wanted her to be centered as a deaf person, and not have hearing people tell her story for her. We absolutely didn't want that to happen. We wanted filmmakers to collaborate with the hearing individuals to talk about how to ensure that Michelle's story was actually her story. It was tough because Michelle is deaf and autistic, which means having to interview her was not a simple process. It was quite challenging. We came up with various strategies to ensure that Michelle's story could be told in her way. First and foremost, in ASL, videotaping the interviews. And oftentimes, it wasn't as simple as giving a question and an answer. Oftentimes, you would have to follow up and say, "What did you mean?" Or maybe the next day we would say, "Hey, do you remember you said this yesterday? Could you expand on that?" So we would do that over and over, and it was hard to replicate that process on film. Her story was akin to a puzzle. We had to put all the pieces together so that we could understand what truly happened to Michelle. And then, coming up with the captions that showed up in yellow, those were based on what we understood of Michelle's story after many, many interviews. After we understood what happened, those were Michelle's words in yellow. But we were also sensitive because Michelle was looking at the captioning. She didn't have any connect. We didn't want her to not have a connection to them. We wanted her to feel connected to her words and know that it was her story.
And a
You
tin
know,
was a brilliant idea. A tin had a brilliant idea.
so we asked, if we could draw a letter, just the letters, the alphabet, to draw out the alphabet language, and then scanned her drawn letters and then put them in yellow. So what you see on captioning in the film is actually Michelle's words. She handmade every one of those letters. So that again let Michelle feel that it was connected to her. It was her story. She could see those captions. Third way was through the reenactments. We allowed Michelle to show the audience what had happened to her, being handcuffed, the physical actions that took place. She was able to show that. And then finally, my favorite was her artwork. Her artwork showed her story and helped visualize what happened to her through her art. Some of those things I didn't realize what they were until, after we saw the pictures. For example, she had talked about a prison guard, abusing her. We thought it was an individual, but then in Michelle's art, if you see it, it is clearly depicting it wasn't just an individual, it was a group of guards. And through her art, it became a strong storytelling device.
Yeah, it was very powerful. Those drawings were so powerful. And there was another one where she had drawn the dog biting her, and that visual was so clear, the shock and frustration that she felt. And I agree with you, Del. Yeah. And so, Deb, would you mind maybe sharing a little bit about the book that you had written, the one that you just showed us, Deaf People in the Criminal Justice System? I know Gallaudet had pre-printed that, so maybe you can pick a couple important pieces from that book that you feel that were raised, that you noticed were also raised in the movie.
Yes, definitely. The way the book is set up, there are chapters covering a wide range of topics. We had different experts from around the country who work in different areas contribute to the book. So I'll highlight just a couple things that I think are really essential to keep in mind. One of the big points that comes out in the book, and we'll be talking a lot about tonight, is that deaf individuals involved in the criminal justice system do not always receive fair and equitable treatment. along any portion of the continuum, starting with interactions with police officers, meeting with attorneys, in the courtroom, and in prison settings. And I think for those of you who aren't familiar with this field, it's really important to understand that 90% or more of deaf individuals are born to hearing families, so they do not have communication readily available. And so individuals have really lacked the exposure at an early age to a natural language, to American Sign Language, to their family's language, which in the United States most of the time is English, but not always. I worked with many families where there were primarily Spanish-speaking families. The parents only knew Spanish. The children were learning sign language in school. We would have 3 or more interpreters in meetings so that everyone could communicate. And actually, when the family learned sign language, that allowed everyone to communicate more clearly. But going back to the point of language deprivation, Michelle, as you saw with some of her communication, really lacked because not of intelligence, but because of early exposure. You saw her family environment. You saw a lot of the unfortunate situations that caused a lack of social and emotional development and gaps. And that's something that we talk a lot about in the book and really contributes to a lot of inequities in the system. Imagine going into a courtroom and the terminology. It's confusing for those of us who have a good understanding of the English language. But imagine that you were trying to understand the concept of waiving your rights, or the concept of due process, or trying to understand the Miranda rights, which we saw in the film. Those things are very complex. And we don't have a lot of professionals who are really skilled in the area to kind of get involved in this, or interpreters sufficient to always be engaged. So I want you to keep that in mind. And one example with that point, there were some individuals I had spoken with who were deaf and had been incarcerated for some sexual related incidents. And before they could leave their prison, they had to take a class. So they first had to be eligible for parole. They had to take the class, pass the class in order to be able to get out of prison. Of the 4 individuals, only one was able to pass that class. It was in English. There was no interpreter provided. They were expected to just read through the worksheets and material, take a test, and pass. And if they could not pass, they needed to stay in prison. So again, we really need to look at the system and access and have things be the same for hearing and deaf individuals. The second point that I wanted to make is the field lacking research and communication access and specialized training. So one of the ways that we can get grant funding and increase knowledge and training and services is to have an understanding of who is the population we're talking about. What is the prevalence information? It is very challenging and near impossible to gather accurate information from different states related to how many deaf individuals we're talking about in jails and in prison systems. When I've tried to do informal surveys, the way that I've gathered the information is knowing someone who works in a system, going to them, and them informally trying to count for me numbers so that I get a sense of what's going on. It's very challenging for us to get current information. Some of the information we have from the justice system is back years ago. So we really don't have any current data to really understand exactly what is the population we're working with. There's also inconsistencies. Some states will house deaf inmates together in a unit, and in other states or counties, they will isolate them. One jail that I worked with to try and help with better access told me that because of concerns for safety and gang-related concerns in that particular jail, they would never house people together if they were deaf, because their bigger concern has to do with the gang issues going on in that particular environment. Another prison in Texas has 40 to 60 deaf individuals together in one unit right now. And we'll talk about some of that a little later, but we really need to look at that. The communication issues. Hearing individuals and deaf individuals in a prison environment should have the same option for communication. We talk in the book a lot about this and some of the legal cases that occurred to try and have a prison situation have a video phone. So hearing individuals typically use cell phones or pay phones when they're in prison to communicate. A deaf individual needs to have a visual system similar to what we're seeing now so that you can see the sign language, and that's a video phone. It's only been in recent years that the majority of prisons have those available. And in that Texas prison where they have 40 to 60 inmates, they have 2 video phones for the 40 to 60 inmates, which is not sufficient. And if I had a way to show you what it looks like, it freezes continuously. You see how clear right now the signing is. Imagine it all blurry and freezing every minute. Those of us who have been on Zoom have experienced how frustrating it can be when that occurs. Imagine that happening most of the time when you're trying to make a call to a loved one or to a friend. Most of the prisons and jails now use tablets for communication purposes. If you're a hearing inmate and you're on lockdown, you can use that tablet to make phone calls. If you're a deaf individual on lockdown, you can't because it's visual and there's concern about confidentiality. So another way that we don't have that same kind of equal access with communication. Also, interpreters. That same prison that has 40 to 60 individuals, 1 interpreter for the 40 to 60, only provided really for medical necessity, not for other things that go on in the prison. And I was recently told that individual's retiring and they don't have a person in line to take their place. So very limited communication. And as we know, if you're in a prison situation, there's specialized programs. If you're there because of substance use, there may be a substance use program. If you have mental health needs, such as Michelle, there may be counselors available. For deaf inmates, there are not, because you need to use that interpreter. They do not have signing therapists, signing programs available. So when it comes time to leave prison, you might have to stay longer, because when you're trying to put your paperwork together for parole, all of those factors are often looked at. And if you haven't had a chance to be involved in those programs, that really counts against you, even though it wasn't anything that you had done. We really have a need for more training. Cross-cultural training. Just providing an interpreter isn't sufficient. We need to be providing our court system, our legal system, our prison system, training about how to use a sign language interpreter, what is involved, what a certified deaf interpreter is, which is often used to help when language deprivation is an issue going on. So there's a lot more than just, oh, here's an interpreter. I was working in a situation with a student who was 18 years old and was arrested. When we went to court, there was no interpreter. Oh, they couldn't find one. That 18-year-old had to return to prison, to the jail, for 1 more week until they could find an interpreter. That would not have happened with a hearing individual. So once again, an example of communication, training, things not being equitable. And then finally, in the book, we do try to offer strategies, recommendations, and I think that's the other thing that we need to all work together to do. There are things that can be done that can help to improve that inequitable situation and the communication access situation. And this kind of webinar is a start to that, because the first thing that all of us will take away with us is that you want to make change, you want to advocate, you want to do what you can in your home community so that things that happen to Michelle don't happen to others. So those are some takeaways from the book.
Again, I think, oh, I'm having some freezing. I think that, one of the things you just mentioned about your book, as I mentioned, my father served 7.5 years in prison, and some of the stories that he told match right up with the stories that you are telling. And it just is shocking to think of these things. And I think, oh, today we wouldn't see this neglected group, and these people wouldn't be so left behind in these prison systems. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So you're right. We need to advocate for change. I would love to hear more about Mohammed's, and maybe Mohammed, if you could share your story working in Boston as a police officer. How did you make the decision that you wanted to pursue that career? Would you mind sharing that?
Sure, I would love to. When I joined the police force or the academy, about a couple weeks later, I was on the beat on the street and froze for me. I was training with my partner. So it was an incident that happened in a different district. It was a domestic violence incident with a deaf individual involved. But at that time, it wasn't my district, it was a different district that I was in. So I went into that call. So the person that went to the call initially, or the officer that went there, uh, they had issues with communication. So they fired up the radio, asked if someone knew ASL. So straight away, I rolled over to the incident. As I showed up to that situation, I could see the situation begin to get worse or escalate. You could see the tense nature in that person's body. You could see how that person was dealing with miscommunication, how there was challenges with communication. He wasn't aggressive. It was just that there was miscommunication that was going on. So the deaf person that was there didn't think that anyone could sign or anyone that was around that could really communicate with them directly. So they just kind of just gave up and they didn't really know what to do. But when I came onto the scene, I started to sign to this individual. Immediately, you could see their look on their face, the situation just changed completely. You saw them relax. You could see that the resistance that they had kind of the tension, the confusion, the fear, and all that kind of just shed away. So I was able to relay that information to the other officers that were on the scene. After that was over with, I ended up leaving and talked to the officer that was on the scene and was like, what was that? Like, you were able to communicate with that person and was able to file that report. And it was really short and sweet. All we had to do was have communication. The lack of information made the situation much worse. And I think a lot of people in the police department, they don't understand communication issues when they arise. And that's one of the reasons why I became a police officer. So growing up, I've seen multiple incidents where on the news, broadcast on television or in the newspapers, a lot of negative experiences with police officers due to lack of communication. So within that situation, it could be excessive use of force. It could be a wrongful arrest due to not having access to communication or understanding what's going on in that situation. And unfortunately, sometimes it was a death that could have happened just because a person that uses sign language uses their hands. So the police officer may not understand what's going on in the situation and feel threatened, even though the individual that is going to be arrested or apprehended or questioned are just trying to use American Sign Language. So that's why I wanted to join the force, to change the narrative, change that negative perspective or perception on police officers, and kind of build a positive relationship with the deaf community as a police officer in Boston.
If you don't mind, do you know how many deaf police officers there are nationwide? Because I honestly don't know that many. And so I was really surprised. And I was wondering if you had experienced any barriers throughout the academy or working with other officers who may have looked at you as a deaf police officer and what their reactions may have been. I want to applaud you. I think it's wonderful. I would love to see more of this happening, but I'd be so interested to hear about your experience. And do you know if there are other deaf police officers? I'm asking that you know of throughout the country.
Oh, around the country? Okay. Well, at Gallaudet University, they have DPS, their Department of Safety, Department of Public Safety. I think there's maybe a good handful there, but for municipalities or state or federal police, I'm not really sure. I think in Texas, there's a female cop that's deaf, but she uses a cochlear implant. But all over the country, I have no idea. I just really know of the two of us, really. There are a lot of police officers who happen to be children of deaf adults who are considered as CODAs. The in New York City Police Department as well, DC Police Department. Um, but other than that, I'm not fully aware. At my police academy, in my experience, it was very challenging. It wasn't an easy pursuit at all because sometimes I wouldn't use my hearing aids, or if I did have my hearing aids, if there's ambient sound like rain or a lot of noise, it will have issues in regards to hearing, even just ambient noise. So going into specific situations or even going to work, it can be difficult. But like I mentioned before, with like ABA, like say for example, when um, you're depending on lip reading when there's like opportunities for talking to folks face to face on Zoom and all that. So sometimes if you're having a conversation with folks and they're far away, it's really difficult because I can't hear them and I can't really read their lips even. So in the academy, even with some of the instructors, it was really difficult trying to understand legal jargon or even like legal situations because in reality, in the real world, people don't really try to accommodate for us as deaf people anyway, right? So sometimes people will try to make accommodations, or sometimes people think negatively because of my background as a deaf person that I don't understand all situations. But I work in a way to work with people in all different capacities. So regardless of being deaf, I think I am successful at what I do.
That's amazing. I do think the number is really low as far as deaf police officers. I don't hear of that often, so I'm so happy to see that. And I'm hoping we can continue to raise awareness that it is possible and we can have deaf people make it through the police academy. So bravo to you.
And this is Dell. If I could add, your story is so important. If you look at the situation with Michelle and her story, ever since she was little, she was screaming for help, and nobody listened. Nobody paid attention. Nobody listened to her story. If there was somebody there like Mohammed available to listen to her story and let her explain herself, many of the things that had happened in her life probably wouldn't have happened. The social service system has failed her at so many levels. It wasn't until this film, when it came out, that her story was truly told. It never would have happened. It should have never taken that long.
Absolutely. You know, I don't know that this can really be answered by anyone on the panel, but if maybe, sharing how this movie impacted how maybe what you've seen it impact your community or your work. I know Dell had mentioned briefly that the video really needed to be representative and how important that was. I do think that was important, but are there other stories you'd like to share about how this film impacted you? Go ahead, Deb.
For me, it's just been the community response and seeing individuals go in to see the film and seeing them come out ready to formulate groups of action and try to spread the word and awareness by showing the film to others. And I've already seen in some of the comments in the QA questions about how people can show this film to other audiences, which I know that MAE can share with people. So for me, the impact has been in that way, just trying to help with the education piece and the advocacy piece. And watching that happen has been exciting.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
I'll say that I mean I've had many amazing moments. I could talk all night. I'll just name a couple of them though. The first was taking Michelle to the world premiere of the film at Big Sky Documentary Film Festival in Missoula, Montana, where she got to fly on an airplane for the first time. She saw snow for the first time. And, you know, it was really powerful for her to sit and watch the film. I know she was sitting next to May that evening. And I think that was the first evening that she really talked about the Miranda rights with May. You know, that's still up to that point. She didn't fully understand, you know, what that was. Anyways, that was really powerful. And for Michelle, you know, the fact that she now has access to our team members. They're all her dear friends now. You know, if she comes across a situation in life and she needs some support or to talk it through, for the first time in her life, she can call a friend and talk in sign language and brainstorm or try and figure out how to solve a challenge she's having. She never had that access to communication before in her life. So, you know, our hashtag for the film is the right to communication. I think that's a basic human right that's not often enough discussed or fought for or held to light. So I'll say one of my other favorite screenings that we've had of the film was with this group of alternative high school students. So these were high school students who had themselves had come from a challenging background. Maybe they'd been in and out of the foster care system. Maybe they dealt with some childhood abuse, you know, broken families, different things similar to Michelle. And when they watched Michelle's story, they were so inspired and so touched. And it really gave them strength to say, oh my goodness, you know, if Michelle can get through this, so can I. And at the end of that screening, they had all created this most beautiful artwork for Michelle, you know, pictures of cats and paintings of, you know, different animals, and they all gifted them to Michelle. And it was just, Michelle was there at that post screening discussion as well, and it was just so powerful. So those are just a couple of my favorite moments that I've witnessed in screening this film around the U.S. and world, because we know that, you know, this, even though Michelle's born and raised in North Central Florida, which, you know, has very few accesses to support for someone like Michelle, it's become apparent that, and you'll see that in Deb and Gabe's book as well, there are issues. These are global issues for the deaf and larger disability community in terms of lack of access to communication. So.
This is Dale, if I could add, just expanding on what you guys have just mentioned, you know, explaining to the audience, teaching, presenting. Sometimes it's hard to get through to people. This is such a powerful story because stories puts us in Michelle's shoes, lets us feel what she felt, experience what she experienced, all of the experiences that she had, and it's really impactful. And it helps us to really understand the important issues that the film raises. For example, the Miranda rights. I've noticed that in the film, the two officers were talking, and they're like, well, she's deaf. How do we give her the Miranda rights? And then somebody said, oh, just have her read it. Michelle would never be able to understand the written Miranda warnings. If you brought in an interpreter, it is considered access, but Michelle wouldn't be able to understand the interpreter signing the Miranda rights. You would need to have a certified deaf interpreter present to be able to explain for her to be able to understand what the Miranda rights meant. So I know it hit me. I'm sure it hit a lot of us how, you know, easy it is, you know, and how important it is to have a CDI present. Giving a person access through writing or interpreter is different because we're trying to have them understand. Without understanding, there's no access. So providing access without understanding is not access. You have to ensure you have both access as well as ensuring the individual understands. And then you should be able to proceed.
Yeah, and I think just adding to what May was saying too, for me, I had witnessed, well, I mean, you guys have said it all, but I witnessed the same thing, the impact it has had on the community and on Michelle herself. As you mentioned, when we went to the various film festivals, being the first time she's ever traveled out of state, the first time she's actually seen deaf people that have jobs, that are professionals, and was able to kind of interact with them. For her, it was so eye-opening and awe-inspiring. And it really has just created a friendship with our team, as you mentioned. And I have seen for her just as an individual, but I noticed that going back, she had a fear of trust that has been embedded in her, where she really didn't know, because of her experiences throughout her youth, how to trust individuals and how to get that support and get the help that she needed, that there were safe spaces for her, and realizing that this was that for her impacted me tremendously. I think that actually leads in nicely to the next question I have. Dell, having gone to the various film festivals, I know there was a lot of chatter and questions. Maybe can you share with us a couple things that were impactful, maybe perspectives or things that the audience might benefit from having?
We showed the film globally, around the US and around the world. And what really hit me hard was that this issue, this problem, is not an American problem. It is a global problem. It happens in England, in Spain, everywhere around the world. Our justice system, our prison system is not designed for deaf people or disabled people in general. Placing them in that and then hoping it works out is not working. It requires a lot more thought, a lot more preparation, a lot more care to come up with an equitable justice system. What's happening right now is not equitable. Deb gave a great example. You have to, expose deaf people to things earlier, and they oftentimes get penalized more so than hearing individuals doing the same type of crime, and it's not right. Secondly, the deaf community really cares about this story, really cares about this film. It shows that our approach was right. It recognizes that it took a lot of work to ensure that her story was her story, Michelle's story. The spotlight was on her. And to be honest, most deaf people stories are told from a hearing person's perspective. A hearing person takes responsibility for telling the deaf person's story. And I'm really proud of what we did here. We flipped the script. Here, Michelle was responsible for telling her story. When we shown this film to the deaf community, they were so appreciative that they finally were seen. They were finally heard. And it was really special for all of us on the team. We were very proud of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I would add that you're right, absolutely. And when we went to these various communities, the deaf people in the audience often came up to us wanting to share their stories because they felt that they had had no space to express their frustrations or challenges in regards to the criminal justice system. So it really has opened the door and given opportunities for these individuals to share their experiences and want to see more change. The next question I have is for Mohammed. Would you mind maybe sharing how you felt when in your view of the justice system, what can be improved? And are there any experiences that you've seen that it hasn't been accessible? Maybe interpreters haven't been accessible, just something that you could share in your experience.
Yes. I think Deb talked about a lot of key points about having interpreting services, even if it's remote interpreting. Say, for example, if a person is in a holding cell and then uh, going through processing, there's a lot of challenges in regards to communication, especially when uh, a person wants to make a phone call. You know, a lot of uh, they don't really have access to video phones and all that, and they can't really use their hands because they may be handcuffed. So the issue there again is communication. So there has to be a mind shift, moving towards using video phones in the justice system or and policing. Another problem is internet service. It doesn't always work. There's a lot of freezing or the technology doesn't necessarily connect all that well because if you think about the building is in itself, with the walls being so thick, signals don't really work all that well. So just recently, a deaf person was arrested, and my coworker gave me a call. Uh, they were in training, but they asked me to come and facilitate communication. So I ended up going to the district to do that. You know, we asked for a certified interpreter that has a credential in legal services or legal interpreting, but it's so hard to find those individuals because they're few and far between, right? Because the thing is, we're concerned about being sued for not having proper accessibility in regards to legal jargon and things of that nature, right? So I think we need to have more legal training for sign language interpreters so we can actually build more of a base of interpreters that can provide services within the justice system. Having more exposure to deaf individuals, understanding deaf culture, basic deaf culture within the criminal justice system as well. How the way deaf individuals communicate through American Sign Language, because that can actually lower the chances or the risk of individuals being impacted by violence or escalation of use of force with individuals who are deaf because police officers don't really know what's going on when they are trying to sign. Other issues are, for example, a deaf person recently was it was just recently they were beat up in December, and then they were interviewed, and they were frustrated because the person that they were in an altercation with did not get arrested or anything like that, and they didn't have an interpreter there, and it was such a challenge for them. And then when I was called on to have that interview with that individual. It was a delay because we needed a sign language interpreter as well. So it was just this ongoing frustration for people who are deaf that are encountering the police. And it took like maybe a week or two for that person who was deaf to have an interview because there wasn't any interpreters involved. So it's not equitable services that people who are deaf and hard of hearing are receiving, and it's all based on communication. So we need to improve that. It's all about communication access, and communication should be a basic human right, like was said before.
For sure. For sure. Wow. Go ahead, Del.
If I could expand a bit on that, you're absolutely correct. I also want to remind the audience that many prisons are located in rural areas, far away from major cities, which means procuring interpreting services in those areas is extremely difficult. So they use that as an excuse, and it takes them forever to actually get an interpreter to show up. There are so many challenges with the system, with our system, so many barriers to communication, and we absolutely have to come up with a better solution. My idea would be hiring deaf individuals, uh, police officers, attorneys, counselors. You wouldn't need interpreters if you had deaf individuals in those roles.
I do wanted to make sure that we have enough time for the audience's questions. So I will go ahead and just pose one last question because it is one that is often asked of us from the audience. And from there, I'll go ahead and allow the audience to proceed with their questions. So people do ask often, did Michelle reenact her experience and go back into the prison? And May, can you maybe share why a teen did that and had that prison scene with Michelle again? Would you maybe kind of give some background of the story behind that?
Yeah, so initially, Atin, as the director, never wanted to, have Michelle re-traumatized and experience being in a prison again. But he knew as a director of this film that he wanted visual images to go along with the prison scene in the film. He knew it was going to be a very powerful part of her story and part of the film, and he didn't want it to just only be a sit-down interview. He wanted visuals to weave within it. And so he had an idea and he shared this with Michelle. He said, Michelle, I think I'm going to get an actress and take her into a prison and just film her from the head down so that, she can be walking through prison or, see her in the shackles and whatnot. And Michelle looked at Atin and she said, Atin, no. She said, this is my story and I want to show everybody what happened to me in prison. And so I will be there. And so we actually rented an empty prison and we hired those guards for the day. They came in and it was actually a really powerful day, and it kind of shows in a way the process of the whole film. The filming process for Michelle allowed her to be heard and seen for the first time, allowed us all to sit with her and do deep listening and understand what her story was. And she got to take us to the places where things happened and tell the story again, and go through this whole process. And she's the one that found her foster mother in the film, and that was after we'd already completed a rough cut and taken it back to show Michelle with a picture-in-picture done on in a small theater in Florida. And it was during that trip that she actually found her foster mother on Facebook. And so then Atin interviewed them meeting, and we had to go back and re-edit that into the film. And her foster mom actually gifted her the childhood photos that you see in the film and the little small VHS clip that you see at the end of the film, because all of Michelle's photos and belongings had burned at some point in her life and she didn't have any childhood photos. But once she met the foster mother, we had all this other, beautiful photos and information from her childhood that we incorporated into the film. Um, but anyways, I think I got a little bit off track, but yeah, so that was Michelle's choice to go back into the prison. And that day, it was actually a really healing day for Michelle, because um, she was in this prison, but she was there with our small film team, people she trusted, people she knew cared about her. And she had some really fun interactions with the guards that day. Those guards weren't there to harm her. They, were good human beings, and they got to understand a little bit about her experience and story. So it actually really was a very healing experience. Anyways, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Dell.
Well, I think you
No,
pretty much
I
stated it beautifully. And May here, Dr. May, I would just say that Michelle did say to me, or to all of us, I think that, I know that not all police officers are bad. I know it's just few and far between, but it's communication. So I think that that experience, when she went back to the prison with those guards that you had hired, she knew that they were not all the same because of that. So. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of talk briefly about a quick update on Michelle, and then from there we'll open it up to the audience's questions. So Michelle is still living in North Central Florida. She lives near Kim and Bob, but does not live with them anymore. She just lives near them. She's really working towards her goal of independence. She has 2 cats. And as May mentioned, when she shows up to situations that she is frustrated and struggling with, she does reach out to the team to help her through it. I think communication access and trust is there with us, which is why that happens. She still loves her art. It's a very important part of her life, and it's a way for her to tell her stories. She drew something not long ago and mailed it to me that I can share with you now. Sorry, I didn't realize how many pictures I had since I've gotten that, or how many texts I've gotten from her, but I just found it. Excuse me. Oh, wait, where's my camera? So, yes. Oh, it's beautiful. Wow. I thought that was really sweet. And there's another picture she sent me too. Let me find that. So she still loves her art and her drawing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the questions that we have in the Q&A. So the first question, so this film is the first time we've seen this, or are we able to see this film outside of this event? It was really heartbreaking and just really sad. So I'll let May share how we can see this film outside of this setting.
Yeah, so we have a few different opportunities for the film right now. It is available through our educational distributor for schools and libraries to purchase so that teachers and students can be using the film in classrooms. If you'd like to bring the film to your community, it's available and you can sign up for a screening on our website. You can fill out a screening request form, and then I'll be in touch with you to kind of share with you the numerous ways that you could screen the film. Like Moxie and the community for this conference, they hosted this screening for all of us to view it together. It's available virtually. We can do in-person events. It can be used as a fundraiser for a nonprofit. Tickets can be sold for events. So there's really a number of ways that the film can be shared with audiences globally. It's available globally. So reach out and we will connect you with the best pathway for your community.
Great. I think to add to that question, how to reach out to us is please go to our website, www.beingmichelle.com. And on there, you'll see there are links where it may say, I want to have a screening, and you can proceed from there and it will reach out to us directly and we can work with you on that. The next question I have the second question is almost the same, wanting to know if you could share the relatives so we had relatives, if they could share it with the relatives who are neurodivergent and friends who may want to watch this film as well. Would it be on any streaming platforms in the future? That's a question for you, May.
We hope so, and keep praying for us. As independent filmmakers, it's quite challenging to find equitable distribution pathways for these important films. But we have not given up. We will not give up. And we did have it on Delta Airlines and America Airlines around the world for several months, the last couple of years. And yeah, we shall see. So sign up for our newsletter to keep updated on where and how it's available. But yeah, the best way is to contact us and we can figure out a way to get it to your community. Another really neat option is that public libraries can host a community screening of the film. And it's my understanding that public libraries also have a budget for interpreters. So if you wanted to have an event after the film, they should be able to fund interpreters for those events too. But that's just one little pathway. There's many ways.
Great, that's wonderful. So the next question. Just one second. Sorry, I'm freezing. I didn't realize that. All right. So this question is for May. Can you tell us anything that you felt was really challenging about putting this film together? And I think you may have mentioned some things already, but is there anything else you might want to add in response?
I'd say that the most challenging piece for our team, as I mentioned before, was not knowing how this film was going to end. And most, especially, I'd say, especially American audience members, they do not want to watch a film that doesn't end well. And when we were making this film, we didn't know how this was going to end, but we knew we had to stay steadfast and work with Michelle and tell her story. So we are all so grateful that it ended in a positive way and that Michelle is still thriving and doing well. Because I don't know that any of us could have handled the heartbreak if it had been the other. But that was quite an emotional journey. In terms of independent filmmaking in general, the hardest part is finding real funding to do this work. It's very important work. We do this work because of the power of story. But sadly, also in the United States, there need to be more real, solid funding sources for these important stories. So that's another challenge that's ongoing.
Yeah, I think I would add to that too, that in the film, if you see at the end where the lawyer, if you remember at the end, the lawyer handed the letter to Michelle and she was like, "Oh, I'll keep that." I just want you to know she carries that with her everywhere she goes. I think that goes back to that fear that is embedded in her. Having that with her is so important to her. And so, as you mentioned, not knowing what was going to happen at the end of the film, the same stays true for her. Del, did you want to add something?
Yeah, if I could add, she was so brave. Michelle telling her story, it was not an easy story to tell. I've met deaf individuals who were formerly incarcerated or may still be incarcerated, and many of them were not willing to tell their stories. Uh, they feel that there's a stigma in the deaf community of deaf people looking down on them, and they don't want to tell their story. Those who are still incarcerated are afraid of telling their story because they don't want any reprisal from the guards for them telling their story. So there's fear in that. So it's not easy to find a deaf person who went through that experience and is able to tell their story. To me, we wanted to make sure she wanted to make sure that it didn't happen to any other deaf people what had happened to her. So she wanted to get her story out there to help deaf individuals not have to go through what she had to endure. And the second reason is Michelle wanted to protect herself. She knew that telling her story, everyone would know what happened to her, and it would ensure it wouldn't happen again. Where she lives, she didn't want to be targeted again, so she wanted to make sure that the world knew her story, that there was a spotlight on there that would give her an extra sense of protection so that she wouldn't be targeted again.
Deb, you can go ahead.
Just sort of adding to the whole theme that we're talking about, because I also saw that there was a comment in the Q&A, the trauma that Michelle dealt with throughout her life that again shouldn't have had to be dealt with, and how resilient she is and how this experience has helped her process that. One of the questions had to do with the mental health, that it didn't seem like she was getting a lot of mental health services at this time to kind of continue to work on her issues. And I think you need to keep in mind that, as Del mentioned, first of all, a more rural area for prisons. Well, Florida's rural just for living, and to get support services are at a great distance. And not everyone does well with a Zoom environment. And Michelle is the type of person, like others similar to her, that really need to have that face-to-face, in-person contact if you're going to be doing any kind of work. Play therapy, different kinds of more active therapeutic modalities are what a person like Michelle would need. You really can't do that through Zoom. And if you're an hour away or more from the closest support, and you want to stay in your own sort of secure environment, you don't want to really leave it. And how are you going to go there? You don't drive, there's no public transportation. We still have, again, a lot of barriers in the way that we need to grow to provide accessible services for people like Michelle. The team, May, another member of our team, Lisa, they've been the ones that have provided her that ongoing support. And this process, like MAE said, I think really helped show her that she can make it. And the art is that therapeutic go-to for her that helps her tell her story when she doesn't have the words to describe it.
I see someone asking about the mental health services and them being inaccessible, things like therapy. And I think one of the challenges that I see is the access to deaf therapists. It's almost impossible. As you mentioned, she lives in a very rural area, and May tried so hard to connect her with someone, and she was resistant to that. And are they going to be able to communicate? Will they understand me? What sort of access will I have? Are really questions that Michelle had. So you may want to expand a little bit about how challenging it was for her to get access to services.
Yeah, I'll say too, because of her numerous traumatic experiences that she experienced throughout her life, she has an incredible distrust of most people, and especially mental health practitioners. But she was in and out of a really horrific mental hospital. Um, those stories we didn't include in the film. They were actually just so painful and so traumatic. But there were numerous times where she'd be taken and left in a mental institution without any understanding of why she was there. And she knew that she wasn't crazy like these people that she said she saw around her. She didn't have these same challenges, but she didn't have an interpreter. Nobody told her why she was there. And there was an occasion where her family came to, and she thought they were coming to pick her up, and they had lunch together, and they left her there again, still with no understanding of why she was there. So when we've tried to suggest maybe, working with a counselor or therapist, and she's just adamant that no way, but I think it's because she really associates them with these prior quote unquote mental health, you know, places, or supposed to be to support, never was supportive to her in her past. So there's a great distrust there.
True. I do see a question that's for Mohammed. And so, Mohammed, the question for you is, can you talk a bit about having worked with other police officers in terms of your disability? Do you feel like it's very noticeable that you're seen, or do you feel like your disability is unseen? Especially, let me read the question. Those who don't really speak English, and may need an interpreter in every interaction. I think this applies to kind of disabilities in general, where police officers' perspectives in working with the overall disabled population, maybe your experience.
Sure. Of course, every type of disability, every disability isn't the same. It all varies based to everyone's experience, right? And just making sure we accommodate everyone based on their individual needs. But as a deaf person, yes, I do understand deaf people because we share a common language, we share a common culture, and then also being able to share and find resources like having sign language interpreters for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. But then we have to think about other folks with other disabilities as well, and how we can interact with those folks. Say, for example, individuals with mobility disabilities or mental health disabilities. But again, going back to individuals who need American Sign Language interpreting services, making sure that the person that they're working with has all the information that they need in order for them to relay the conversation between the officer and the person that they're interviewing. Not just having a person that signs within the community, but actually having a certified interpreter to actually provide those services. It makes a difference in that situation and also in the future.
Thank you for that. The next question is asking, as far as the privacy of the prison system, not federal, oh, excuse me, private
Privatization.
prison. Yes, excuse me, sorry. So wondering, in comparison between private funded and federally funded prisons, do all these same things apply to these barriers? And for my personal story, my father being placed in federal prison, we had no idea that the federal prisons did not adhere to the ADA requirements. They, in their local state, adhered to their section,
Mhm.
I think their section statutes. So Deb, maybe you can kind of shed some light on the impacts of the
Mhm.
differences between private and federal prison systems.
Well, there's county jails, there's state prisons, there's federal, and there's not a lot of communication between how things are done from one state to another. So I haven't seen a lot of difference in having better access, if that's kind of what you're getting at, when it's public or privately funded. I see a lack of access in all of the settings. And I also see, as Dell mentioned, the fact of the location of the prison or jail or whatever we're talking about really lends itself to it as well. And in talking again about the Texas prison, which is the 40 to 60 men, it's not the optimum job for female interpreters to go into that environment. And if you've talked to interpreters who have worked in that environment, male or female, it's not always a very positive environment. So for that reason, additionally, it's hard to get people to be willing to go in and work as interpreters. And as a little segue, when I asked the individual that I'm in regular contact with what he would want to tell interpreters, I was preparing for a training that was coming up. And he said, first of all, to get training so that you can work in this kind of environment, and to keep in mind that the majority of the inmates have language deprivation. And so if you're not a CDI or a very skilled interpreter, all the information is going to go right over the inmates' heads. So not only do they need more interpreters, they need skilled interpreters. The other thing he said to me is volunteer to come visit inmates. If you have jails or prisons near you, try to register so that you can visit. His point to me was that hearing inmates have people coming, so the guards and the wardens see, oh, there's people coming, and they keep it on their radar. If no one's ever going to see the deaf inmates or deaf individuals, it's sort of like, oh, they're forgotten. And he doesn't want them to be forgotten. So those are just some kind of parting words from a person currently in prison of things that we can do to try and help keep them in the forefront. And again, just trying to encourage more individuals to be willing to work in those settings. But I have not seen a difference. There may be people in the audience who have worked in both settings and are more aware of what's going on. The programs that I see in prisons that are working towards having better access are because of lawsuits. And the cases I've been brought in on are because of legal action, not because of out of the kindness of their hearts, they wanted to improve access.
I'm trying to see some of the comments. Amy, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. The interpreter was muted. So yeah, I've been trying to scroll through some of these questions, and several of them are questions for Mohammed, and wondering whether you do presentations and inviting you to come and present and speak. And so I'm hoping that maybe after this, we can find a way to connect you with them and potentially have you present and do more outreach, because it seems that many are really interested in your story and want to learn more about your work. I will scroll down. I went down to the last question, but I just want to go up a bit. And it is another question that we do often get, and it comes up during our viewings. People are often just like shocked by how we got the dash cam from the police officers. May, do you want to maybe explain how you obtained that footage?
So it was obtained from a few different offices. One was, a situation where Michelle had run away in Daytona Beach. Um, some of the footage actually can't even. Sorry, I have a have a cough in my throat tonight. But yeah, it was in Florida. It is Michelle's property. So, different states have different laws around that dash cam footage from police, but it's Michelle's property in Florida, which we were grateful for our film's purposes. And so any footage that, she asked for and was able to get belongs to her. So we were able to include that in the film.
All right, let me scroll up now. There is a question that's asking whether you think that it's the part of this film that really focused on her case, or the fact that we were filming her during her case and trial, impacted the judge's decision rather than the previous judges that this was not a part of her case.
Del, do you want to answer that?
No,
I think you'd be a better person to answer that because you were there when it happened.
Yeah, I do think that the film definitely played a role in helping everyone understand that here was a chance to maybe fix prior mishaps that had happened in those counties in Michelle's life. Um, Her public defender was an incredible advocate, and none of it would have happened without his support of Michelle. And um, I like to say that I think this film kind of began when Michelle was in prison and she connected with Kim's guide dog, Effie, at the time. Michelle loves animals, and Kim was in the prison. She was very low vision at that point. Michelle connected with her dog, and then luckily Kim knew a little bit of sign language, and she connected with Kim so that when she did get out of prison, Kim realized that she needed more support, and she came to live with Kim and Bob. We wouldn't have met Michelle if it weren't for those interactions happening, and this film wouldn't be possible. The world wouldn't get to know Michelle's story if it weren't for all of those little connecting pieces. But similarly, if it weren't for Kim and Bob and the film happening, maybe the public defender wouldn't have had as good of an understanding of Michelle's life either. Because as he said, it's about all of us taking the time to communicate and really understand someone's experience and situation. So all of it definitely played a role, and I think the film continues to protect Michelle now, and we're really grateful for that. So.
Wow, there's so many questions and comments. And so I'm kind of just looking through, and I do see that we only have a few minutes left. Someone had asked how common is, sorry, let me reread it. How common it is for neurodivergent individuals to be stuck in the school to prison pipeline. Just like Michelle was, where she was kind of just really hitting barriers with navigating that process. And I think going back to one thing that Deb had mentioned earlier is the fact that we do not have access to enough statistics. There is not a tracking of, prisoners with disabilities or what type of disability, which is shocking because we do have the ability to do that with our systems, but it is hard to find those individuals because of the lack of statistics that we do have and the lack of data that we do have. Deb, I don't know if you want to add to that as far as that question goes.
Yeah, just very briefly because of time. Having worked in school systems with students that I consider high risk, there are more individuals than we would like to think who are like Michelle, who are the ones ending up in the system because of the lack of education, because of the lack of awareness, understanding, because of the language deprivation issues we talked about, and because the system doesn't understand and provide, full access. So I think we really need to look at systemic changes, and we need to figure out how to do a better job of providing information to kids as they're growing up about things that they may be encountering in later years, and we need more services. In the film, Michelle talked about going to the Tampa Bay Academy, which actually was a program for deaf individuals that has shut down. So it focused on kids who had possibly some behavioral or mental health issues, presents that way, but is actually because of other reasons. In the United States right now, for individuals who are deaf under 18, there are 0 programs, residential programs, for kids who may need more support that are tailored for them. And there's also only 3 programs for adults who are deaf who have substance use issues that are specialized in the entire United States. So we have a lot of work to do to get more access for individuals like Michelle's and others who are in need of support and services.
All right. Oh, sorry, just trying to just scroll here. Sorry about that. I do see that we're almost out of time. I do want to close out with any last comments that anyone would like to say or words you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up for tonight. May, Deb, Del, Mohammed.
I will just say that from time to time we do take commissions of Michelle's artwork, and we have a pretty neat system where we figure out sort of a painting you'd like, or she might choose a subject matter, a size. She'll paint it. We send her the supplies and the canvases, and then she actually takes it and posts it to you to the post office. So if anyone's interested, you can reach out to us on the website, and I can also help you get some of Michelle's artwork.
All right. Anything else? I see Del has his hand raised.
Yeah, maybe in closing, communication barriers means that your voice is taken away. And when your voice is taken away, there's no way to defend yourself. It happens often. And when that happens, it's impossible to get justice. It is so critical to ensure that access to communication, as May said, and I agree with, is a human right. We all have a right to communication, being able to tell our story. It allows us to live free.
Beautifully said, Del. I think that's a beautiful way to wrap us up for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And before we do completely wrap up, I do want to just make sure that, Ben, there's nothing that you need to add as far as logistics goes. And I also wanted to confirm, Ben, are you saving the chat? Because there are a lot of things that I missed. It's impossible to have read through them all. And I would really love to be able to do so after this is complete. I am recording.
Yes. This is going to be recorded, and then we'll also have the chat as well, and the questions and answers. So there's so much great, interactivity that's happening today, and a lot of great dialogue. There's a lot going on tomorrow. We have a full day starting at 8 in the morning till 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. So we're gonna have wonderful panels tomorrow. We're going to have the reading of our play, Brick by Brick, tomorrow. So looking forward to that. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for our panelists. It was such an inspiration to see what you guys were speaking of today, being Michelle. It just gives me goosebumps just talking about it right now again. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.
And joining us.
We'll see you tomorrow morning. Oh, don't forget to fill out the evaluation after you close out. That'll help us with setting up future events and future panels. We'd love to hear your feedback, pros, cons, and anything in between. Looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow.
Thank you again.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ben.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.